If you look at just the first photo, right? The photo on the funnel for the consumer is the first thing that a customer sees that represents your dealership. Just think about that. And so if it's not great, ask yourself, would you buy a car from me?
Today, I'm thrilled to chat with Peter Duffy Jr., founder and CEO of Dealer Image Pro, a cutting-edge merchandising solution for car dealerships. Fun fact, Peter actually began his career as a mortician. He's had a fascinating career, and together we dive into some crucial issues that dealerships face, such as inventory time to market, the evolving role of dealerships as content creators, and much more. A big thank you to our sponsors for making today's episode possible: CDK Global, Car Wars, and Dealer Image Pro. And now let's get into the show. Peter Duffy on the CDG podcast. Peter, welcome.
Good morning. How are you, Yossi?
Good morning. Good afternoon over here in the East Coast. The real question is, where are you calling in from here?
I am in Popsicle Studios, aka the Bat Cave. This is the same studio that they shot Batman with Christian Bale. And then also they did the Weekend video shoot here as well for his videos. So we're super happy to be here. We're doing our instructional videos for Photo System V7, which is our latest app coming out soon, which we can talk about in a little bit. But yeah, we're happy to be here. It's a really cool space, and we're getting some great content for our marketing and social. So yeah.
What is your background in like I went down the rabbit hole of your company, and I saw that on your website you have this video which is extremely well produced and well done. You can tell that this is not Mickey Mouse. I mean, this was a very big investment. You pretty much did like a video about your product or service, what you do, but again, just really kind of top of the line. How did you accomplish this? Like, how did you go about actually creating a video at this high of quality to explain what your company does?
To be clear, you're talking about the Cowboy Quinn videos that we do. Yeah. I mean, we can go back as far as we need to, but we are professionally trained photographers. And so that's really where the whole thing stemmed from. But I think in marketing, we want to have fun and we want to show a different side of us. And when we come down to business, we get very, very serious, obviously, for our dealer customers and their customers. But we go through it and we sort of come up with the idea overall. And then Quinn Wilson, who's the cowboy in the videos, he's trained actor, producer, director. And so I'll usually get the guts of the value prop of what we're doing. And then we'll just build out each scenario from there. And the walk and talk kind of feel of it all keeps everything moving really good. And then we throw in a joke here and there, and it kind of keeps that video for long form, 4.5 minutes or whatever. It keeps the attention of the viewer. So yeah, we're really stoked about that, and we produce everything in house, so we don't have to hire a big production crew because we're trained photographers and videographers. We know what we like. Now we certainly sub out, the other actors and things like that are in there, but we have those connections and things like that. So that's how we do it. We just shot another one recently, actually.
Take us a little further back before we get into the tactics, and there's so much I want to ask you when it comes to merchandising specifically. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Again, just looking through your background, it's you come from had different experiences, completely different industries. Saw you were, I believe, a mortician at some point. So give us the Peter Duffy story.
So going back to getting out of high school, came from very little means. And went right out of high school to mortuary science, really trying to just get a good degree or a good trade that would really, help me feed myself essentially and get me out of poverty essentially. And that worked really well for a long time. I was a mortician for about 14 years, and I was really good at it. It's a really interesting, position because you have the ability to help people. You're dealing with families at their time of need. And then you have the science aspect, which is anatomy and physiology, microbiology, and that sort of stuff. And so I was able to go to Japan for a year and work in a Japanese mortuary. And that's kind of where I picked up a camera. And that's kind of where I started to learn, like, oh, okay, I'm a pretty good photographer, or naturally to compose things. And so I went on a backpacking trip for about a year. and took, butterflies, great wall china pictures, all this kind of stuff. Came back to Connecticut to work in a mortuary again after my stint in Japan. And then I started selling these pictures in coffee shops and, bed and breakfast and sort of this sort of thing. I started making money doing that on the side. And I was like, okay, I think I can be a photographer, because although I loved mortuary science and I loved my job doing that, it definitely wears on you, right? There's no time for sleep. I mean, you're going out all hours of the night, as you can imagine. Death has no time. And so ran over to California to, further my education in photography. Totally lost my ass, signed away my life on student loans, went really into the depths of, debt and bad credit and all of those things. And at the time, photographing puppies and kids and whatever I could to actually make money. And then 2009 comes along, and my love of cars kind of came into focus, and my love of photography sort of came into focus. And there was a dealership, Toyota of Oxnard at the time, and this is 2009. So a studio in a dealership was not a thing then, but this very forward thinking general manager puts a studio in his dealership, says, "Hey, I'm going out." This is like beginning of eBay Motors kind of thing. And he's like, "I'm going to put the best pictures online." And so I was able to work in that studio. And before you knew it, they gave me another dealership and another dealership. And I saw the writing on the wall. Entrepreneurship kind of kicked in. And I was like, okay, if I can duplicate myself and do the same thing for all these dealerships, I had this pretty good business going on. And so fast forward to about 2016, we have 40 dealers, 25 photographers. And as you can imagine, like the saying goes, it's like herding cats. And so I had these really great friends that own like 100 Domino's pizzas, very, very good businessmen. And they said, "Peter, this doesn't scale across states." And we were getting requests, but it just didn't make financial sense to put labor in those markets as a vendor. And so in that moment, it was like that aha moment that I came up with the wireframe guidelines, patented it, and my wife and I took our last like 20 grand and made the first photo assistant app.
When did you realize there's an opportunity in the auto industry? Right. So you started working with dealers because you're, into photography. It was, you found this, you worked with a dealer and it grew from there. But what was that moment like? I mean, was this as the industry started adopting more digital retailing? Would you say it was before that?
I think in school, in photography school, I had an assignment to shoot some portraits, and I went to a Ferrari dealership in Calabasas. And because all the cars are so colorful and nice and everything, we had these really great portraits of these people. And the GM goes, "Hey, you're pretty good at this. Do you want to go up to Concorso Elegance, which is this huge, I'm not sure if you're familiar, but it's this really cool car show up there in Monterey. And if you ever thought you knew how much money there was in the world, you knew, just stay there and then you'll find out. It's just unbelievable." And so I came back from that and had all these wonderful pictures of all these posts and pre-World War cars and all this stuff. And the GM was like, "We're going to use these everywhere. We're going to use these in our magazine, on our website and all this stuff." And it was at that moment, it was like a line for me, my cars and photography. And I was like, that's what I want to do. And so, yeah, it's pretty wild ride.
Before I ask you some specifics about, trends in our industry and merchandising, what's the fundamental problem you're solving today? Right? Like, I know you offer several different product services, but what's the problem you're solving for dealers?
So it's a great question, because I think it can be easily seen as like, we have this photo, video, 360 window sticker tool, and that's fine. But the fundamental problem is time to market. If you can reduce time to market, you can increase inventory turn. And so if you can do it well for the dealer and the dealer's customer, then you can empower them to really win in the books, and then also online, in their online, visual communication to their customers.
So, and then when you say reducing time to market, which obviously is the biggest thing we all know, right? Inventory management. It's
You'd
everything.
think we know, but many dealers, it's amazing when we get on. So dealers come to us for three
Well,
things.
we know, but the question is if we're taking action.
Yeah, totally. And it actually, I think it's like any business. Like, you see a problem. If you have a strategy, that means you are prioritizing what's important, right? And so dealers, to their credit, they're busy desking deals, dealing with personnel, dealing with fixed ops. They're dealing with all of these things. And so it's hard for them. Imagine you're a general manager and you're looking at your website for not the first time, but for the third time that week, and you're frustrated because your SRPs aren't lining up the car. It's just a mess. And so you don't do anything about it because you're busy running the dealership. And so it's overlooked and overlooked. And then finally, when you have a breaking point, that's when you go, okay, we need a better solution for this because either the vendor isn't working out or the in-house solution that we have right now isn't working. And so that's when they come to us. And they come to us for three things. The first one is consistency of photos. And I think like when they come to us for that, they don't really know what they mean, except that they want everything to look good, right? And so that there's a whole slew of things that have to happen in order for that to happen. And then time to market happens as a result of being able to have things in-house. And then it has to be easy to do. And I don't just mean any yo-yo can sell you a cheap app and say, hey, it's easy to do at your dealership, but you're not going to get consistency because you're doing what's being interpreted by the person using the app. And that's, I think, the key differentiator for us from all of our competitors. We are one of one. We see ourselves as one of one. And we are our own competitors. And we are just continuously changing things at a very microscopic level to increase that. And we've been doing it for 15 years.
This episode is brought to you by CDK Global. CDK Global has been empowering nearly 15,000 dealers with the tools and technology they need to build deeper relationships with customers. Their team is keenly aware of the state of dealership technology, and while many vendors promise seamless experiences between your CRM, DMS, digital retail, and fixed ops, most of these bolt-on solutions tend to break workflows and cause more harm than good. That is why CDK has launched a new dealership experience platform. This new integrated software consists of everything you need to operate a dealership efficiently while delivering an unparalleled experience to your customers. Basically, everything working together, not separate, one system to run your dealership as opposed to 10. CDK developed it with an outside-in approach, listening to dealers every step of the way. You can learn more about CDK's dealership experience platform by visiting cdkglobal.com/DXP or clicking the link in the show notes below. If you had to take the perfect dealership, I think we know our industry is faced with increasing competition, whether it be direct to consumer or online only retailers who are still dealers. But again, there's more and more competition and merchandising is different all across the board. If you had to take the perfect dealership, how are they merchandising their vehicles? And like put yourself aside for a second, right? Like what's the consumer experience like? The perfect dealership.
I mean, if you go on your website as a dealer, and I'm going to try and answer this question the best that I can, but if you go on your website and you're a dealer, just ask yourself, would I buy a car from this dealership? Is this dealership organized? Does this dealership visually communicate that they care about their inventory enough to show it to me? And the reality is, customers don't want to call the dealership until they get to the down the funnel to the 1.5 dealerships that has their actual car. And so at that moment, you need to be able to give them all the visual cues that they need to make a good buying decision based on price and mileage. And so if you're not giving them everything they need, and a competitor is with the same car, it can just be a Honda LX with all the right fixings and the right price and mileage. But if the other dealership is giving them what they need to make the call, and you are not, you're losing out. So it's just such an easy fix in many ways, or a simple fix with a very sort of complexity that needs to be done in the background to strategize to make sure that it's getting done on the daily.
What's the data showing, right? Because again, you work with so many dealers across the country on their merchandising, on their photos. I'm curious, what does the data show? Yeah, in terms of performance for example, dealers that are using 360 spins versus not, dealers that are merchandising with a real background versus a background that's photoshopped out, or whatever software you're using. So like, what does the data actually show? Where is the the best conversion based on the data you have?
I think you can go with engagement, and to give you hard numbers would be silly of me to do that. But the clean backgrounds are obvious on its face. Eliminate the background distractions. so that the customer can see the actual product, right? So no trees, no poles, no other cars, and that kind of thing. And that's why AI background rules are, which we do, are really popular right now. But a studio would really be the key for that. As far as 360 goes, to answer your question more directly, photos take a car to market, man. Wholesale to retail is time to market. When the cars get photos, that's when you begin getting hits. If you don't have photos on the listing, you are fishing with an empty hook. So if I have more photos on, or more of my cars online than you do, chances are my percentage of traffic and engagement is up over yours. And then it becomes the quality of that, which we just discussed, is am I giving all the visual information for that to happen? The money, the ROI, is in the holding costs and in the inventory turn and in the time to market. So we can make all the great photos that we want, but are they getting online on time? And there are two ways, essentially, to do this. The vendor, which I used to be, so I could visit your dealership 3 days a week, but that means you're only getting your inventory online half the year. But if I'm doing my inventory in-house in an effective way, 6 to 7 days a week, my cars are getting online all the time. So you're creating that activity that's there. So I think measuring a person's, intuition or their idea of what looks good is really, really hard. But what you can measure is holding costs, time to market, and inventory turn really clearly.
Well, Peter, you're touching on an important point that I've been talking about, which is that it seems to me, I obviously keep a very close pulse to the latest just advancements in our industry and just what's working. And it's not always the fanciest stuff, but it seems to me as though the products that I'm seeing gain a lot of traction and momentum are products that are leveraging technology and are making the dealership employee better, are enhancing them as opposed to replacing them. And it doesn't mean that won't one day change. I'm just saying what I'm observing today. And I observed this in the service department. I'm also observing it here where again, me going down the rabbit hole, I consider myself a student of our industry and I just enjoy seeing, the latest and greatest. I found it very interesting that you are working with dealers to actually train their employees. You're pretty much de-risking the entire experience for them and you're making it very, very simple and easy. I think back when I built my studio, within the dealership, what the hell do I know about taking pictures and just merchandising in general? It's like, who am I to start training someone? So I think that's a very, a smart angle to come from because, right, like dealers, like we don't want to do anything other than, focus on directly selling that
you
car.
Don't say. Yeah. Right.
Well, we want to sell the car, right? Like I don't want to be an expert in, in AI or text or whatever. So anyways, that's
you just
my
want
take.
It to work, right? You expect to buy a piece of software and you expect it to work. And the thing with photos or photography, or at least the visual content for merchandising, is you need to be able to go out and actually photograph the car. It's not a widget that works in the background. You can have the tool, just like you can have a hammer, but a hammer and a nail is only as good as the person using it. And so you're right, we take it step by step and kind of walk them through the woods to the other side where it's bright and sunny. And when we get them to that point, we just provide the framework and the strategy and the step-by-step strategy for their merchandising and control the user experience all the way through. Like I said before, like any yo-yo can sell you a cheap app, but then you've got to figure all this stuff out in the background. And that's where we shine. And I think that's a testament to our customer base and our loyal customer base and our churn. We have a very, very low churn. Most dealers that go with Dealer Image Pro, I mean, we measure that stuff. They stay.
What's your biggest challenge with dealers today?
Just like any consumer, when they go and or look to purchase something, they're looking for like the solid, is this going to work? Like when we're doing demos for dealerships.
Does it sell cars, baby? I love it.
Does it sell cars? And is it going to work for me? Is it easy to do? That's the very, very important, right? Even though the manager is the decision maker, someone else is actually going to do the work. And what we try to do is inform the management of what's going to happen. And we have a very strict framework to make that happen. And then we move them to the side and we just work with that photographer. And we do that in the background and produce the result for them so that they can see that. So now go back to that GM that's sitting in front of this website and everything's pointed in the right direction. Backgrounds are cut out. All Camrys have exact same photos so that customers can see that. That's the satisfaction. And if dealers are doubtful because there's so many products in the market, or whether or not that's going to work. And I get it. I mean, when you go buy something from anywhere, you're like, shoot, I hope this works. But it really only works. Things only work unless you do. Software is only as good as the person using it. And we are really masters at making sure that the people using our software are trained step by step, every step of the way, because their success, I mean, it sounds very cliche, but their success is our success. We have two customers really, man. Like, it's not a joke. Like, you have the dealer customer who you have to satisfy and make sure that this is working for. And then we have the dealer's customer who is actually on the website. And if any of those two things don't match up, if the dealer's customer is having a bad experience, we're getting fired. If the dealer's not having a good experience, we're getting fired. So we have to we have two sets of customers that we have to look out for. And we kind of do that all the way through. And that's why it's a system, not just software. It really is a strategy.
Industry wide, who do you think does the best merchandising? Like out of every single auto retailer?
Group One Automotive, because we're responsible for it. If you looked at Acceleride and then go look at, not to mention any other large publicly traded corporation websites, but go look at Acceleride and then go look at the rest of them. I just dare you, go for it.
All right, let's
and
do
it's
it.
really
Let's do it
clear.
right now.
I mean, jump on Acceleride.
Group One. All right, let's look at
So
Group One,
Acceleride.com, and then just go to used cars. And with the exception of probably a few here and there, because we're responsible for about 95, 98% of the dealers there. They're all pointed in the right direction. Everything's looking great. And the customer's having a consistent experience through that. And it's really important to point out.
That's a hell of a testament right there.
There's 145 or 146, depending on the month, dealers that we work with Group One. None of them know each other. Like, the photographers don't know each other, but they've all gone through the same training. They're all using the same tool. And we've done that over a period of 2 to 3 years and really dialed it in for them.
Peter, what's exciting to you nowadays? Like, I'm sure, again, I saw just looking through your background experience, I'm sure, you're sitting pretty well financially. I'm taking a big assumption here, but I'm imagining you are. And you've kind of, you started as a photographer, and you sort of pivoted into this niche, which is pretty crazy if you think about it. Like, you went from Mortician. Yeah. I mean, it's like, it's just random in a good way.
It's an American
cool.
success story. Like,
it's an American success story.
Completely. And we have no investors. Like, you think about that for a second. Like, I don't mean to interrupt you, but think about it. Usually you have an idea and then you go and pitch it and you get seed money, whatever. We literally started with one dealership and we just continuously used the profits over time to just dial this in all the way across. And so we've been able to create jobs. There's 40 employees here in the US, 40 overseas that we work with every day. And to be able to create this wonderful company, my wife and I, where everyone is.
Oh, so
really
your wife's
happy.
Involved as well.
She does a lot of the HR stuff and admin stuff. Yeah, she's amazing. Yeah,
holds down the back office. I like it. So what's exciting to you? Like, why? Like, what's exciting to you about this space specifically? Again, pretty niche space. I'm curious to know, like, what gets you, curious and interested here.
I think more and more of the data in terms of reading Jason Rice's book, Work the Facts, or poring over Cox Automotive studies, like the bigger ones, like the PDFs and things like that. And really digging into the metrics of holding costs. I mean, if you think about, if you had a car, just one car, let's say, and it took you 12 days time to market, and let's say $40 a day for holding costs, and that was in 2017, so it's probably a lot more now, but let's just say conservative numbers. It takes you $480 before you even get the car in your front window, your shop window, for people to see. And if I do that in 7 days, that's $280. There's a huge difference there. And then just take that at scale. You have 100 cars, I have 100 cars. We're talking about the difference of 48,000 to 28,000. And there's no doubt that if you're using a vendor, which I used to be, by the way, and or taking your photos in-house with an effective system, that you are winning. There's no way that you can lose from that if it's effective. So that gets me excited. On a personal level, we moved from Ventura, California, where we used to be headquartered, and moved up to Northern California. And stupidly, I was a little too stupid to know it was hard. We purchased a house with a small vineyard on it, and it was all overgrown. And I didn't know, right? And my father-in-law is an immigrant worker, and he looked out over that field, and he was just like, "Peter, are you sure about this?" And I just, I think we can do it, you know. And so this vineyard that's around my house, we've brought that up to snuff and really wrapped it up super tight in the last 3 years, and we're able to sell the grapes, and we're making our own wine this year and stuff in small batches. But that kind of gets me excited. It takes me away from the auto industry, which is super fast paced, as you know. And it's always very demanding, right? I need to fulfill customers' requests really, really quickly in order to keep them happy. But where you get into agriculture, everything happens at a much slower pace. You can make a small change and watch it change over time. And I think that kind of balances out the fast pacedness of the auto industry. So that gets me excited.
Yeah, talk to me more about consumer expectations. I'm curious to know if, given the last couple of years or several years, where we went from a very, in-person experience to then, digital retailing is everything in our industry, to then, bouncing back to, okay, wait, the in-person experience actually really matters. People want to buy in store. Have consumer expectations or demands changed with regards to online merchandising from your perspective? Like, have you seen something, shine above anything else, the way consumers, consume the content, view the inventory, anything major change regarding consumers?
I think if you get to I agree with all of that. Actually, like it's one thing to start online to buy it. 92% of people start online to buy a car, right? They start going through that funnel. They go to autotradercars.com, car gurus, wherever it is that they go. And then they start through that funnel and getting down to that zip code, and they visit 1.5 stores to get their car, right? So they don't
1.5 stores in person.
in person.
Hundreds of stores online.
Online, right? And so the real thing is that it's hard to say this too, because I love dealers because I do business with them, but consumers are reluctant to call a dealership. So when you get a lead, you can be sure that they've done, for the most part, that 92% of them at least have done their homework. And so I do think I just recently purchased a car. I love going to the dealership. It's like candy it's like an adult Disneyland, right? Everything is so shiny and cool, and the other cars are in there, and I just love that. And I think most people do love that. What they don't like is the BS, right? Is just like, sell me the car, get me through the process as quick as possible, and get me there. And it could be that different consumers have different needs. They need a new minivan, or they need a fancy car for a third car on the weekends, right? But the point is I think they're doing their homework online to get to you. And when you have that lead, hold on to it and push it through, because they've gotten to you. You're 1.5 of what they've gotten to. And you've shown them enough online for them to make a decision to call you. Because otherwise,
pretty much
for the most part, they're not going
takeaway there is that the funnel has changed significantly in the last 10 years. And if you are getting that call, it's a much warmer lead than it may have been historically, which I think it's even more reason to invest more in your front line, meaning the people on your front line. Whereas, as I was coming up in the industry, we salespeople were greeters, at least in, where I personally worked. I know it's not every store, higher end stores, it's very different, but they were greeters. Again, back to what I was saying earlier, you're seeing a big trend where it's like, hey, let me retain maybe fewer people who are armed with the right tools and technology, make them a lot more efficient, a lot, more effective. And, they can simply convert at a higher percentage of customers.
There's a couple of things happening there. One, again, I'll just repeat it. Software is only as good as the person using it. AI can work in the background, and there's some amazing stuff out there. I know you had some great people on your show that have AI, customer relation software that works really, really well. But the second thing is making sure we have a rule here. One, that our employees are happy. Two, that the customer is happy. And the only reason that customers are number two is because they are number one. But I need to make sure my employees are happy because they're going to treat my customers the best that they can. So if they're walking through in the dealership, if they're walking through that front door, you have to be up. You can't be hungover. You can't be like, right? You got to greet them and say, what can I do for you today? And typically the people that walk through the front door are going to give you a stock number and say, I want to see this car. As opposed to when we were kids, we used to run around to car dealerships with our dads on Sundays, and you'd hit 3 or 4 of them and kick the tires. They know specifically what they want. And so when they get there, you got to roll out the red carpet, which is why, dealers have coffee and all kinds of things that are going on now, at least the good ones do. So customer is number one then. Like it's really important, but making sure your employees are happy is paramount because they're going to be the ones treating the customer.
This episode is brought to you by Car Wars. Attention car dealership pros. Are you ready to experience the latest in call tracking technology? Car Wars invites you to talk to an expert about how you can recapture lost revenue from mishandled phone ups and stop viewing the phone as your dealership's biggest liability. With Car Wars' latest solutions powered by cutting-edge generative AI, you'll reveal critical insights into every call that comes into your dealership. Complete a demo before December 31st, 2024, and you'll also be entered to win the holiday gift card bundle. Restrictions apply. See terms and conditions by clicking the link in the show notes below or visit carguymedia.com/CW to learn more. Again, that's carguymedia.com/CW to learn more. You mentioned kind of thinking about the future, and I was curious to know, I mentioned on a previous podcast, the idea of creating, like, what's merchandising going to evolve in our industry, right? So the very forward-thinking dealers, I've had discussions about, like, okay, can we use like the Meta Ray-Bans to do like virtual reality on lot, right? What's really like, what is the next, frontier of merchandising? So I'm curious to know, how do you think about it as someone that is obviously you're running a company that's leading the charge here into space? What world are we heading into? Right? Are we all going to are consumers going to be able to see all of these cars in VR? I mean, what world are we heading into as an industry?
Let me tell you about a failure recently that involves that. And so I think what you're asking me is, what does the future look like for a car buyer? Does it look like we put on Ray-Ban sunglasses and we're able to get inside the car and all of that stuff? I think that the tech isn't quite there where we need it, although it is pretty amazing at the moment. I think it'd be amazing to look at your website, your Apple Vision Pro or whatever. But a failure that we did recently, and we're actively always looking to insert AI, like we trained models for millions and millions and millions of photos to help with our editing in the back end, and make sure that everything is good. But we recently, in the last 2 years, put AI into our app and put it in there in a way that we thought would be an easier way to help people understand what good compositions look like and kind of direct them. And what it turned out to be was a bit of a dud because it sucked the battery life off the iPad so quickly, because you're asking the processor, the brain of the device, to do so much more. And so we had to kind of like back up there and rethink about it and try not to reinvent the wheel. But the purpose of the newest photo assistant that we have was to make training more intuitive. And it made us take pause and go, okay, maybe AI doesn't belong on an iPad. Our whole fleet, that's like one of the things that separates us from everyone else, is we're not an app on a phone. We give you a 11-inch iPad Pro, and this tool becomes the tool to be able to do the merchandising. And so when you're shooting 20, 30 cars a day at a high volume dealership, you need the battery life to continue to do your work. And so if I just threw an app on there, we would have failed really quickly because all of these iPads would have been sucking battery life and we would have had to backtrack. So it was both a very painful monetary experience, as you can imagine, but it was also really enlightening because we didn't have to reinvent the wheel. And so we came back with something that's even better, or at least we think it's better. And it's working extremely well. So I would be cautious about that. I think for at least the foreseeable future, photos are easy. It's a one-click thing, and photos take a car to market. And going back to your previous question regarding 360s, certainly they contribute to engagement online, and I'm a big proponent of that. I wasn't in the past. I kind of thought this is fun to spin a car around. It's fun to look inside of it. But what is it? Is it really selling me the car, and is it actually bringing the car to market? Video is a huge thing. We have AI composed video that does really, really well as well. But the photos are first. Everything else is just customer engagement. Get them to the page first. If you look at just the first photo, right? Just the photo on the funnel for the consumer is the first thing that a customer sees that represents your dealership. Just think about that. And it has everything to do with a bunch of things behind that have to do with money. That
It's
the
like
ROI.
it's like your teeth. You know,
You
say
need
your
them,
teeth.
right? You need them, and they should look
everyone's looking
good.
at your teeth for.
Yeah, you got to have a nice smile, right? So it's the first thing that people see, and so if it's not great, ask yourself, would you buy a car from me? And so if you wouldn't, I mean, even backtrack that a little bit more. When dealers buy cars from auctions, the photos are fucking horrible. Right? They're just guessing whether or not they can make money on that car gross. And they're going, oh, I hope I'm going to get a good one. Right. And usually, obviously they've been trained for years and way better at it than I would ever be. But I think auctions could be giving better photos to people that are buying cars wholesale. And so if you're thinking about that from that perspective, think about how your customers see it too. And then
But that's the dirty little secret, though. That's where the arbitrage lies. Find that.
You didn't see the scratch on the back bumper because they missed it, right? Yeah, they avoided that altogether, right?
That's the arbitrage. That's the arbitrage.
Yeah. No, that's totally true. But I guess think about okay, look at general managers. Typically, it's pretty hard to find a badly dressed general manager, right? And you putting your best foot forward, you wouldn't hire an attorney in sweatpants, right? That doesn't make sense. So it's you want to make sure that you are presenting yourself, or in this case, your business, and the products that you sell to the customer in the best light. And so it just is such an easy fix that it affects so many other things. It makes sense to strategize or prioritize that thing at the dealership. And it's low-hanging fruit, right? There's a lot of other things that happen between wholesale and retail, recon, detail, service, all that stuff. But at least you get this part, and then you can work backwards to all those things and build systems at the dealership for those things. And we do help because we've had so much experience at dealerships as vendors. We've had tons and tons of good consulting conversations about recon, detail, and service, and so that's helped out too. So super fun.
I'm curious from your conversations and your pulse in the industry, are dealers investing in studios? Are you seeing this as a thing or less so? Anything
I think it's very much more on the decline, given the ease of use of AI backgrounds, right? If you have the room at the dealership to make a studio, you can afford, the space in a sense, or you're not going to put a service bay there or whatever it is. It makes sense to have a studio. I think you'll save money on backgrounds for sure. But if you don't have the space, there's a lot of landlocked dealerships. Yeah, you can use those AI backgrounds. But I think I've designed, I don't know, 100 studios, and I've hand built at least dozens for dealers all over the country. And I really love to do that. But I guess if to answer your question directly, I'm seeing less of it. And I think knowing some of the other people that are in the industry, I won't name names, I know that they're selling less studios, let's say, because of AI backgrounds.
Well, I can tell you the bigger groups are investing in podcast rooms or podcast studios.
Totally. That's Ziegler.
Ziegler, Rohrman. That is something where you're going to see, in my opinion, 5-10 years out, we're going to see, every dealership is going to have a content creation room. They're just going to have to do it. They're going to, it's going to be for anything. It'll be a camera, microphones, whatever. and people will just create video content there, audio content. I mean, anything. But I think that's going to continue accelerating in this industry, given the fact that organic content on social media is performing so well, right? All these algorithms are driven by good content. It's not like it used to be, and dealers are selling real cars from it. And so I would expect to see a lot more of that.
Yeah, I think people want to see your personality. I think we're pretty good at doing that at our company. But going back to like Ziegler, for example, Sam DeArc, the COO, he has his own podcast there. They have a hot air balloon. Have you ever seen that? It's a Ziegler hot air balloon. They put all over the community in Illinois, and it's got their stuff all over it. They sponsor NASCAR and do different things. And they're recording a lot of that as content and pushing that out. And that's creating not only brand awareness, but who are they, right? Behind the dealership veil of like the man behind the curtain, who are they? And I think you're right. I think the more and more they're showing their personality, the more and more they're going to attract people that want to do business with them. And that's really what we're trying to do. That's what you're doing, right? Like you're interviewing dealers, sticking with the topics, doing that kind of stuff. And your content revolves around a specific industry, which I'm sure that's why you've had the success that you have.
Pretty funny you mentioned Sam from Ziegler, because we have a pretty big announcement coming tomorrow, which again, I guess it's sort of coincidental. Like I did lead the witness just a little bit when I said podcast studios within dealerships, but stay tuned because tomorrow there's a pretty big announcement on that. So it's a good mention. I want to ask you, I want to talk about what you're doing on the media side, because I think it's fascinating and I think many people can learn from you. One question before we move on to that, and it's what's next for your company, right? You've built this great product. You're bringing a great service to the industry, but what is next? How are you going to continue pushing the envelope forward?
We're always doing R&D in terms of 3D and some of the stuff that you mentioned, with glasses and things like that. And we always want to try and push that ball forward. But I think getting down to the fundamentals further and expanding the market share is really where we want to be. That's big in 2025. Also, we've just broken into boats, which is really cool. Big boat group out of Florida, Georgia, Texas. So we're going to be really into those verticals. This past year, we broke into motorsports. Year before that was motorcycles. So the thing with that is you need to hire good salespeople that speak the language. So not passenger car people don't speak boat, and boat people don't speak motorsport. So even though they're closely related, we need to be able to push forward in those verticals. And that's the plan in 2025. In addition to that, Photo Assistant V7 is just like off the charts cool. New UI, not too far from where it was, so that we are not like, freaking anyone out that's going to be using it, but it's much more intuitive, much more easier to get the shot, easier for our trainers to get the shot for the dealership or for the person that they're training there. Faster upload speeds, all of the things that need to be happening, just improvement overall. But I think the true things that separate us, in addition to the strategy and prioritizing the dealership. And when I say strategy, I mean like being able to, we make it super simple, right? So we're a month-to-month contract. If I'm not doing what I told you I was going to do, fire us. That's like, we need to do that, right? It should be that way.
I like that a lot. I saw that on your website. I was like,
why would I rope you into a contract and I'm not doing it? Like that's not really cool. So, moving into an orientation, we make sure the management is in the room and the photographer's in the room. We set expectations there, and then we say to the management, we're going to report back to you, but let us work on this person. And within, like, it depends on the person. 6 cars if you're great, 12 cars if you're not. We're getting you consistent immediately. Then it's getting you up to speed. What's lot strategy? How do you get all the cars online or on the lot, making sure they're accounted for, et cetera, et cetera. But the things that are like actual tangible items that really separate us is we are an iPad-based, business. We have a network of hundreds and hundreds of iPads that are out there. It's not an app on a phone. Who has the app on the phone? Who has the login information? Who's the support? It's not a good place to be. You need a screen. So when I started this business, I told you, It was a camera, a clipboard, and a phone, and we've combined that all into one iPad that does everything within there. So the equipment is huge. Unlimited training. So obviously we have startup costs just for dealers like anyone would. You pay for it one time, and then we train for the rest of the lifetime of our relationship. Um, AI and human editing, as you can imagine, I'm a pretty great photographer. I'm not an expert, I'm not a master, but I'm a pretty good photographer. And so even my pictures need to be edited, like even for color correction, straightening, whatever that is, we make sure all that's done. And we've trained AI models to do that, as well as human editors that look through every set of photos. So that separates us for sure. And then quality control. We review all of our dealerships' websites and all of our dealerships' exports at least once a week. So we put them through a roster, and we do that once per week to make sure that they're getting what we ask them for. And then, of course, customer service. So 5-star support. Look at our Google reviews. Like, it's mostly about how great our support is. So those are the
You're
things.
doing really great work, man. And like I said, if anyone's listening in audio, take a second, join us here on video as well on YouTube. Again, most of our listeners are audio, but got a pretty badass studio behind you, so I love that. Before we wrap up, I have seen as well along my rabbit hole, going down the rabbit hole. I have seen that you're doing some good stuff on the media side. And I saw you at a show that you launched, Dealers and Cars Getting Coffee. Can you just tell us a little bit about this? What is it? Why are you doing this? What's the point of this?
Well, I have shamelessly ripped off Jerry Seinfeld for sure, right? If you've ever seen comedians in cars getting coffee, we just mirrored the whole show up over that. But I really wanted to be able to honor the dealer. So my story's cool and all, but how many, the common thread across the whole thing is that general managers were the detail crew. They were the people picking up cigarette butts in 1978 or 1985. They were, and they've got this. I think at the dealership, the general manager is this like, oh, right? They're like the king of the dealership, and so it's the highest position you can possibly get within that dealership. And then of course you have regionals and other execs and things like that. But the general manager runs the show for the dealership, and they all have these amazing stories. And I really wanted to honor that. And I think the format of Jerry's thing, combining it with cars, we're in the car industry, and then being able to get them in the car. At first, admittedly, I kind of went on more of a personal trip. The first one was with Dennis Gingrich, who you had on your show, and it was really great. But I wasn't really giving enough value or asking the right questions from the person I was interviewing in the show to give value back to the viewer. And so I kind of changed that halfway through the series to really make sure that the viewer was getting value, but also eye candy of this great car and stuff. So I really just wanted to honor that position at the dealership. I think it's worth it.
Yeah, I always say, like, you know, when I ask dealers, I'm like, hey, why do you listen to the podcast? I think the common word I hear is just like, or words are continuing education, right? So people are looking for value, and it's, when you're purely entertainment, at that point you're competing with, Netflix, with everything. But when you're offering value, that's when, you niche down and, become something more unique and differentiated, especially in this industry. So,
Are you familiar with Alex Hormozy at
yeah,
all?
yeah, of course.
He's totally, yeah. If you don't know, right? And so he says you're either entertaining or providing value. But if you can do the two of them together, then you're really winning. And so I think the jokes and the cars and that sort of stuff in dealers and cars is entertaining. But the value coming from another person that's doing the thing that I'm doing, what little piece can I get out of that? That's the continuing education that you're referring to.
Excellent resource. And we'll link it in the show notes as well. So if anyone wants to check it out, I highly recommend it. So you're doing great work. Peter, before we wrap up, any closing thoughts?
Yes, I do actually. NADA. We have a blockbuster type of show for our booth. Like, we're not going to be just there selling our wares. We're actually going to have a stage presence on there. And the new Cowboys and Aliens, which is the new cowboy video that you talked about earlier in the show, is going to premiere there. And it is absolutely hands down hilarious. And if you think that was well produced, you can't even wait to see what we have in store.
I think you have a future in Hollywood, my friend.
We're going to play it 4 times. We're going to be have the opportunity to interview 4 pretty amazing guests. And I'm also going to be doing a masterclass on merchandising 4 times on how you can take your photos in-house for free if you really wanted to. So
yeah, and I just might be there as well.
You might be on stage, actually.
Let's go.
My people talk to your people. We'll have lunch.
I like it. I like it. Peter, amazing work. Thanks for coming on. And I'm going to be excited to keep up with your work.
Thank you so much, Yezi. We really appreciate it.
All right. Hope you enjoyed that episode. Please give the podcast a rating, consider subscribing to the show, and check the show notes for links to what we talked about. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you guys next time.